Hi there, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church Stony Stratford. Well, usually we'd be looking at the Gospel of Mark, but today it feels appropriate to talk about the life of Queen Elizabeth. There's no doubt her death has come as a shock. She was, of course, 96, but many of us have known nothing else. It's definitely the end of an era, however we look at it. Well, I think we can say, whatever our political persuasion or what we feel about the monarchy, is that she was a great example of leadership. She understood that to lead was to serve, and she often spoke of herself as a servant. And she led by example. I think it was notable at the funeral of her husband Philip that she observed all those restrictions that were in place. No sense of privilege there, but setting a good example to others who were going through the same and were suffering. But one of the things that came across very clearly, and was something she was particularly vocal about in her later years, was her Christian faith. She once said this: "God sent into the world neither a philosopher nor a general, but a saviour with the power to forgive." Now, there's some humility there, isn't there? She realised that basically we as human beings have gone astray. We don't go God's way. Therefore, we need God's forgiveness. She also said this: "Throughout my life, the message and teachings of Christ have been my guide, and in them I find hope." So what hope do we have at a time like this? There's been a genuine outpouring of grief, and that's good. Well, what was her Christian faith, and what would it have told her about the hope we have? Well, in the letter to the Thessalonian church, 1 Thessalonians verse 13, the Apostle Paul writes this: "Brothers, we do not want you to be ignorant about those who have fallen asleep, or to grieve like the rest of men who have no hope. We believe that Jesus died and rose again. So we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him." I like that. The Bible doesn't sugarcoat anything, does it? It says death is a nasty and horrible experience, and people who are left behind and lose loved ones grieve. But the Christian doesn't grieve without hope. We know, don't we, that by death, Christ's death on the cross, the thing that would stop us, the barrier of sin, that's going our own way, doing our own thing, instead of going God's way, being at war with God, as it were, has been removed. And death has been defeated. That great enemy is gone once and for all. That is a marvellous hope to have. In the letter to the Corinthian church, in 1 Corinthians 20, Paul writes this: "But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep." What's he talking about there? Actually, that chapter of the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 15, goes right through the evidence for the resurrection. It even raises arguments about what if there was no resurrection? Well, we'd be pitiful, wouldn't we? But Paul says Christ has risen. And here's the wonderful picture. This picture of first fruits was very important in the ancient world, particularly the Jews. They used to bring their first fruits and offer them at the temple. And it's interesting, really, because it was showing how God had blessed them. And the point was this: if a farmer came in with, say, 3 or 4 thick stalks of grain or wheat, and he offered it to the Lord and said to the priest, "Look at the harvest this year," he wasn't talking about that. He was talking about the fields of the stuff. Jesus' resurrection is just the beginning. There is a hope for all who turn to him. In the year 2000, the Queen said this: "For me, the teachings of Christ and my own personal accountability before God provide a framework in which I try to lead my life. That, I think, is a wonderfully reassuring statement. I'm sure the verses I've just read, the Queen would have taken quite great comfort in and would have known of them, having such a sturdy faith. The Bible doesn't just provide hope for today or for the living. It provides a hope so that we can face death with confidence and realize that because Christ has died and we can be forgiven, we can face God with a confidence, not because we're great, not because we're good. Going back to that first quote, God sent a Saviour with the power to forgive. We can stand forgiven before God. Thank you for listening. At times like this, we perhaps look for answers. And so I'm just going to offer a booklet. We've got several out on the railings at the front of the church, but here's one that's been very popular. Where is God when things go wrong? Short read, could be helpful. Thank you again.